Live. All right, everyone, thank you and welcome back. House Government Operations, Area Terrace. It is 11:10 on January 29th, and we are doing a flyby on H 541, an act relating to interference with voters and election officials. Committee may remember that this bill was actually assigned to us when it was first released, but we recommitted it to our colleagues in judiciary, and they've been working on it in this interim period of time. So we're joined by Representative Goodnow and council to go over the work that judiciary has done on this for us to consider and possibly take a position on, because I believe you intend on voting it out this afternoon.
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
My name is Ian Goodnow, rep from Brattleboro, a humble member of the House Judiciary. Thank you for having me. So before the committee is H 541. Would you like me to just kind of walk through from our end, kind of like what we did?
I would love that, because it reads as a strikeout, correct?
Yep. So very briefly, the bill is really at the heart of it is trying to establish a criminal penalty for interference with voters and election officials around the time of an election and at the polls. There is a federal criminal statute that exists that this mirrors in many ways. It's been modified some. So we're not totally reinventing the wheel, but that federal law cannot apply to state elections. So it can only be used in a federal election in Vermont. So there's a gap. And it came from the Secretary of State's office, Vermont Secretary of State's office, as a potential thing for judiciary to look at to try to close that gap and ensure that we have a criminal penalty that is available for prosecutors for specific acts that could impact voters during elections. So that's kind of where this starts. And the bill is the experience of judiciary moving through this bill was the intersection of a vested government interest in protecting voters and protecting voter rights, while also trying to protect First Amendment rights and ensure that we aren't creating a law that violates someone's First Amendment right to free speech. So that's kind of like where it started. So judiciary heard from a number of witnesses. We heard from the Secretary of State's office. We heard from the ACLU, heard from the Defender General's office. We heard from DSAS, the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. First round, this bill had a lot of other stuff in it, civil investigation, things that we realized it was kind of expanding the scope beyond really where we wanted to go. We came back with a second draft that removed that civil investigation material and also was really getting at what is the big concern, which is if you're looking at the bill on page 2, section 2, subsection A, basically what is the criminal charge. So the current language is no person shall intentionally or recklessly intimidate, threaten, or coerce, or attempt to intimidate, threaten, or coerce. And then we have a bunch of subsections as to like what we're talking about there. So that first language is what a lot of what judiciary worked on. The first round that we had of the language was probably facially unconstitutional. It was going to it was too broad. So we had Professor Smola in from the Vermont Law and Graduate School. He was the president. He's now just a professor there, but he's basically a First Amendment constitutional expert. So he's argued in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on these issues. So he provided for judiciary kind of the guiding light post, which is Counterman v. Colorado 2023. It's a U.S. Supreme Court decision that states that really when you're working in this realm of First Amendment considerations on criminal charges, intentionally or recklessly is where we want the language to land. We want to make sure that that's the bar that we're looking for the actions taken by an individual. If they're intentionally or recklessly intimidate, threaten, or coerce, or attempt to intimidate, threaten, or coerce, then we are well within the realm of a constitutional criminal charge. Smola felt that if we included that language, then this would facially be constitutional and would be well within the realm of something that the state could have on the books. So we implemented that. We put that in here on the second round. There was also a little bit added in, if you look at subsection little a1, big B, causing the other person to vote for, not vote for any candidate for public office or public question at any election. That's added language that's not in the federal version of this kind of criminal charge. And the public question is a term of art for basically like, you're at a town meeting day election and there's a vote on the budget.
Ballot initiative.
A ballot initiative of any kind. And so we wanted to ensure that the language here, especially given that we're trying to capture state level elections, that if there was some attempt of coercion or intimidation on a ballot initiative, that this criminal charge could capture that kind of activity. So I've probably gone on for way too long, but I clearly like talking about this kind of stuff.
We afforded plenty of time for this.
Yeah.
Like, no, this is a really important 2 pages.
Yes. Yeah. And so I just want to, if you were looking at the bill as introduced, it's way longer. And the reason why it's way longer is because there was this civil stuff in there around this. This all lives in chapter 17, which is not a title that Title 17 that we don't really live in that much because we're all in 13, which is like the criminal charges. 17 is for voting and elections and all that, so it should live here. But in 17 are other civil investigation tools that the state's attorneys and attorney general office has. And what we were trying to kind of figure out was whether that civil investigation stuff should also be a part of this type of criminal charge. Where we landed was it's being considered in a different bill that the Senate has. It's too much for us to be looking at here, and that's why it's removed. So I just, I think sometimes when you're looking at bill as introduced versus bill that you're now looking at, and it was 17 pages, now it's 2, you might be like, what happened? So that's what happened.
When I first saw this, I thought it was just like an amendment to insert into a larger form.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, finally, before I'm happy to take questions on it. Where we landed, we had people back in. So Defender General's office had real concerns initially. We had him come back in and he looked at it and he feels much better about it. ACLU looked at it. We made sure that we touched base with everybody after the the intentionally or recklessly language was added. And just those 3 words really helps to make this make our witnesses feel more comfortable with moving forward with it. With that, happy to take questions.
Yes, Rep. Morgan.
Yes, hey, Ian. Maybe I'm naive and don't know what's going on here in the state, but I'm just curious, are we just doing this to try to get some parity with, like you said, the federal level of things, or have we had some cases where there's been some of that here? Just some context or what you may know, and I don't know.
Absolutely.
Didn't realize.
Absolutely. And
Curious.
Yes, I really appreciate that question. We heard from the Secretary of State's office, including members of their election team. They have a 6-member election team who talked about threatening behavior that they had experienced in their role that they play in election times in Vermont. And then we also heard from one town clerk who has had, unfortunately, a number of experiences which were, it's interesting. I don't know if they actually would have necessarily been captured under this new law.
They might have been teetering on it.
Yeah. And so I think generally speaking, and I think we can take politics out of it. The rhetoric around elections and election time has gotten more heated, and I think we can acknowledge that. And so ensuring that we have a criminal law on the books that can at least not protect, but at least punish someone if that unfortunately were to get to that point. So I think to answer your question, we did hear from a number of individuals who were experiencing stuff that may or may not have arisen to a criminal charge here. But man, the trend.
But hit the trigger for, you know, maybe we ought to.
Yeah, and I think that also came from the Secretary of State's. Because the town clerks report to them when they've got, and I would defer, but that was my understanding from witnesses. They go to the Secretary of State when they've got issues. So Secretary of State was hearing stuff, and then that's part of what prompted this.
And you expect it to be very favorable out of your committee?
Well, I'm also an attorney, so I never like to speak in hypotheticals. But
Leave it alone.
I would say, based on where the committee discussion has been, I haven't heard like, except for like, oh, this is unconstitutional. Well, we should probably fix that. But besides that, it's been fairly positive.
Fairly well received.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I try to put you on the spot.
No, I appreciate
Okay,
it.
yeah. Protect yourself as an attorney. I can appreciate that. Thank you.
Laws.
The worst.
Didn't want to say that.
Representative Hoover of Burlington.
So no consideration of, or any consideration of escalation, use of a weapon, things like that. Just a black nomination to be made by somebody.
Yeah. Trying to think of how I would answer that. So, no, not in this bill and not in this proposed criminal charge. But I will say that discussion around this new criminal charge was done in consideration of criminal threatening in 13 VSA, that there are other things that you're going to be able to charge somebody with if they had like a weapon and they were bringing it to a polling station or something like that. So we're just trying to give prosecutors enough tools. I think there's language in the criminal threatening statute around election officials or candidates. And so they kind of overlap in some ways, but this is a lot more clearly about election officials and elections and voters, which we don't really have. I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but
Well, no, the question sort of came from the situation where you'd have, I mean, God forbid you put a campaign sign across the little line on the,
the 100-yard, 100 feet, yeah.
but, you know, somebody standing on the other side of the line with a weapon as an discovers.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So it's going to be, it is going to have, it's these cases. Okay. Yeah. So these cases are going to be very fact dependent and probably no matter how perfectly we shape this, it's probably going to get a constitutional challenge. There's probably going to be an instance where, because I think the question would be, is it reckless to have a firearm across the street from a polling station and be brandishing it in a way that maybe someone could feel intimidated by? And there will probably be an argument there about whether it is or isn't. And there's also the prosecutorial discretion that's always lives in the background here, where the case comes to them and they're like, I don't know if this actually satisfies it. So they may not even press the charge. So that conversation did come up somewhat, not as much about firearms, more just like, well, what if someone's just screaming on the side of the road near the polling station, screaming about whatever? Like, is that actually going to, and so, just that, and a lot of what we heard was it's going to really depend on the case, and it could be challenged.
Anything else with a member from the judiciary? No hands from our guests online. New. All right, member, you're relieved.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Presentation.
You know, it's good that language is in there about the public question, because then it mirrors what is in S-23 and in 5. It's all coming together.
I caught that when I did the sidebar with council. It's not that big. And then we've got another bill that we're looking at later, but it just, it's a.
Really?
No, and that's more about like
Okay.
Mr. Devlin, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. For the record, my name is Tim Devlin, Legislative Counsel. Just an initial note about S23. Representative Goodnow was referring to that civil investigatory authority that was being expanded. That is indeed in S23. That was the stuff I was referring to. So,
Criminal behavior, in other words.
I forget if there's criminal, if there's just civil in that one. I'd have to ask Rick Safe, but. So committee members, you should have access to draft 2.1 of a committee amendment coming from House Judiciary Committee to 541. That is an act relating to interference with voters and election officials. Just kind of orient the committee as to where we are in the law. I thought it's kind of useful to briefly describe what is already in statute elsewhere, kind of somewhat related stuff and how this differs from this. So starting from the very top, US Constitution gives primary authority over election administration to the states. And that can be found in Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, called the Elections Clause. Federal government is involved in legislation, in election legislation, though. It's pretty much limited to federal elections and instances of citizen rights. So everything else is left to the state's realm to determine. So this is where we are. We do have some current laws already in the books. Representative Goodnow was great in speaking to some of the provisions existing in criminal titles, that is 13. Specifically, we have 13 VSA 1702, which is the criminal threatening law. And there's two subdivisions, D and F, in case anybody's curious. And those are essentially enhancements for the regular base criminal threatening. And those have to do with particularly candidates, election officials. Those criminal threats are posed to those individuals or voters in certain circumstances, I believe, in proximity to the polling place. We do have an entire chapter in Title 17, 35, titled Offenses Against the Purity of Elections. And that's where we're going to be amending right now. And this is where you'll find statutes having to do with voter fraud, misconduct by election officials, but really nothing yet, in particular, aside from maybe some oblique references here and there in one or two of those statutes about third-party conduct or interference or obstruction by somebody who's not a voter or an election official, so just third person. So, and if anybody's curious for that, really, we have 17 VSA 2017, which is what we'll be amending here and then adding a new section afterwards. But the interference with voter language in 17 VSA 1972 in section 1, you can see by what's struck out is a little vague and different enough to arguably merit the addition of a new section, but somewhat similar enough to confuse the new section, therefore justifying its removal, for clarity's sake. So turning now to the bill itself, the amendment, it is indeed very short, just the two sections, really three accounting for the effective date. But the first section amends that to be made redundant language in 17 VSA 1972, and really just takes out the subsection B having to do with the interference with voters. If anybody's curious, the remaining language having to do with showing ballots is actually anti-bribery, anti-corruption provision. The idea historically being that showing one's ballot after voting is can be proof of selling one's vote. So that has been prohibited there, although there's kind of more modern questions about the advisability of that section, but that's really not what we're here to talk about today. So section 2 on page 2 is really get to the meat of the substance here. So it will add a new section, 17 VSA 1975, to be titled Interference with Voters and Election Officials. And subsection A is what is prohibited conduct? Subsection B is the penalty. We'll start off with A. No person shall intentionally or recklessly intimidate, threaten, coerce, or attempt to intimidate, threaten, or coerce. Then we have one, really, anybody trying to exercise their right to vote. And then two, so really the voter. And then two is the public servant, election official, or public employee. I'll just stop there and drill into this a little bit further.
Rep. Waters Evans.
Thank you. Can you tell me, what specifically recklessly means?
Yes, I can.
I knew you could.
Fantastic question. So under Supreme Court jurisprudence, that is the US Supreme Court, specifically a case Counterman v. Colorado from 2023, the court looked at this in the context of what constituted a true threat. When the matter comes to on the matter of protected free speech under the First Amendment versus what's not protected, there is a body of law discussing the idea of true threat. True threat is instance of speech which is not blanket protected. Not all speech is protected from government infringement. You can think of defamation, fraud, let's see, not profanity, but what is the term I'm reaching for here? Incitement and obscenity, sorry. But true threat is one of those historically unprotected categories. And in order for it to be a true threat, really, there needs to be some sort of mindset of the person uttering the threat and so what we call a mens rea in the judicial context. And so there are essentially four different, broadly speaking, levels of kind of thought or kind of mental responsibility, you can kind of call it another way, which laws can kind of hinge on to see, whether they've satisfied this, the perpetrator or alleged perpetrator, and to what degree of intent really is involved. So the highest we have is purposeful or intentionally. So we have that there. So, but there's an or there, so we get to a lower rank one. So we have purposeful, knowledgeable, purposeful, I'll just define all of them for context. Consciously desires a result, knowledgeable or knowing, that is aware that result is particularly certain to follow. Recklessness, third rung, we have somebody who consciously disregards a substantial and unjustifiable risk that the conduct will cause harm to another. In the threats context, this means that a speaker is aware that others could regard his statements as threatening violence and delivers them anyways, kind of just doesn't care. And then below that is negligence, which is you're not aware of the risk, but you probably should have been. It's a common sense kind of thing. So this is the court essentially in a balancing test, as in Counterman, was looking at the rights of the individual versus how, to what degree would law enforcement efforts be hampered by this. And so they chose in the middle of, actually, I won't get into it here, but there was broader debate about what is objective versus subjective frame of thought. And they just kind of went in the middle for recklessly. Essentially, again, somebody who just doesn't care about the result here. So plugging this in here, we have somebody who is acting without that care or intentionally to intimidate, threaten, or coerce, or attempt to do so. Any other person, either obstructing someone's right to vote or obstructing the administration of an election. We'll get back to that. Does that answer your question at all, or?
It does perfectly. Thank you.
Okay.
So interesting.
So, and actually that was going to be where I was going to go next anyway. So that mens rea is in the first few words of subsection A there, that no person shall intentionally or recklessly ... So let's take a look at that first category of, let's see, in subsection 1 here. So they can't intentionally or recklessly intimidate, threaten, or coerce, or attempt to do so any other person for the purpose of A, obstructing the right of the other person to vote or to vote as the other person may choose, or B, causing the other person to vote for or to not vote for any candidate for public office or public question in an election. And so those seem very similar, but you can kind of extrapolate from what this means. Like A could be generally described as broader conduct than just actually, marking your ballot, but something like your voter registration would be protected under this being part of your right to vote. Something, not necessarily bound to election day. B would be indeed, when filling out that ballot, but not necessarily limited to actually election day. Now I think about it, because it would be something along the lines of a threat to vote this way or something harmful or coercive or threatening, would be the consequence of that. So that all of A, 1 and B have to do with obstructing the voter to exercise the right to vote some way or another. Turning to 2. So again, no person shall intentionally, recklessly intimidate, threaten, or coerce or attempt to intimidate, threaten, or coerce a public servant, an election official, or a public employee for the purpose of obstructing the administration of election. So one thing you'll just notice off the bat is this does not include candidates. It's just really about the administration of election. And so this could, it's broad and can cover things like, tampering with coercing somebody to, obstructing through drop boxes for ballots or something like that, or something with tabulators, or something with calling in a bomb threat to a site or something like that. Those could all fall under the conduct contemplated here, essentially, so long as they're in the context of somebody intimidating, threatening, or coercing another individual to do so. And then B, we move on to the actual enforcement mechanism, or the consequence really, for the teeth. So a person who violates subsection A, we just spoke about, shall be imprisoned not more than 2 years or fined not more than $2,000, or both. So, and so just overlooking, looking back to my notes here, I should just mention that section 2, and Representative Goodenow already references, but was roughly based on a federal equivalent, and that citation is 18 USC section 594, titled Intimidation of Voters, for those who are curious, but has significantly morphed since that original inception. Any questions?
Questions from the table?
I think I do, but I think I might have just reread it. No, I don't, but just to be clear.
Ask the clarifying question, member. That's why we have all these bodies at the
As an
table.
election official, as the town clerk, and for the purpose of obstructing the administration of an election. Does that mean preventing somebody from voting?
Yes, that'd be in the section above that.
So if I'm not a town clerk, anymore, so I don't have to worry about it, but in the past, if I had somebody that would come in to vote and I knew they didn't live in my town.
Mhm.
And they wanted to vote here anyways, because it's where they used to live, and they wanted to vote in my town and not their way at college or whatever, they were no longer on my voter checklist. I would tell them that they couldn't vote. Would I be obstructing them the right to vote?
I would say it depends on whether they do have the right to vote there or not. Did they move back? Are they reestablishing residence?
No, they're just.
Visual ballot or something like that. I mean, that would be, they fall under the possible voter fraud statutes there if they're registered
Right, I
elsewhere.
just wanna make sure this is put the town clerk in a wrong situation, but okay, you do have those that, oh, you moved away 5 years ago. Been on my checklist and we've purged you because you haven't voted in the last 2 general elections. Now you're appearing. Although then you get your same day voter registration, so we tend to not deny anybody. So just, there are always those that try to sneak in, that's right. They voted absentee in that state.
And there's other sections in this chapter here, that is the offenses against the purity of elections, which speak to administrator conduct particularly. So I imagine that'd be probably more apt to look at versus this.
Yeah. I always err on the side of not denying anybody, just. On your merry way. I mean, I've had some very angry. Crazy situations where it got pretty scary and not sure if I was. Being protected, with the gun and the whole bit, it's another story. Okay.
Okay.
Just giving you some space to walk through that thought. Yep.
Yeah.
Rep. Coffin.
And I just, for my own clarification, that for A, where it says obstructing the right of the other person to vote or to vote as the other person may choose, that one would apply more toward like if you're voting on the school budget, trying to
Yes.
change it. Force you to vote
Yeah, I
for
would,
it if you don't want it, or
right, if
don't
they're
vote
trying
for
to
it if you,
kind of persuade or induce you into voting a certain way
Mhm.
that's against your will, I would say that's probably more A or A1B.
okay. I was trying to make sure I was reading that right, where that covers more of that than,
It could probably fall under both A and B.
okay.
Yes, Rep. Tisdale.
And then that goes right back to the voter's oath. When you take the voter's oath, you vote. Your oath states that you won't take a bribe or be influenced by another person when it comes to casting your vote.
Yeah.
So sort of kind of all ties in.
All right.
Any other questions?
I reviewed the bill during our report. Sorry to miss your.
No. Yeah, no. I know you were attending to another matter, so I just wanted to give you the chance to ask any questions or weigh in, but seemed, okay. Okay, judiciary does have this up for a vote this afternoon, so us taking a position, now I know would be preferable to them, so it is an informal straw poll. I'd like to just ask briefly, we have two members joining us via Zoom. Do you have any questions or commentary for this before?
No, it sounds like judiciary covered all the bases to make sure that this is as sound as possible, and I definitely understand the rationale behind it.
Thank you, member.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Okay, so straw poll, motion to find it favorable. Thumbs. Yep, I got one thumb on the digital
I'm raising
screen.
my thumb up. I'm raising my thumb up.
Okay, cool. All right, so that provides us with a
10-0.
10-0-1. Yes,
10-0
10-0.
Russ.
So, all right. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, judiciary. This is an important piece. So
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you,
very
council.
much.
All right, so we will be back here at 1 p.m. To talk about flood prone municipalities and a series of other topics. We're offline for lunch. See y'all in an hour and 15 minutes.